Hello and welcome to Community Forum. My name is Joseph Feaster and I have not been here for quite a while, but I have the pleasure of co-hosting today's program with another Community Forum host, Steve Kelley. And we're happy to be here. Hopefully everyone had a great Thanksgiving, and as we embark into the holiday season, I want to make sure that you and your family are all safe. But today we're going to have a special program, Steve and me. We're going to talk about this great author to my right and maybe to your left on the screen. Steve has written a number of books, 3 in fact, and over the years we've talked about these, Steve, but in turn I want to bring folks to a composite of the 3 books you've written. I also wanted to, I think now we're talking about 4 books because I want to talk about Swept Away. But let's begin. First thing, good to see you. Welcome, my friend. Hopefully you had a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you. We did have a great Thanksgiving, and we're blessed, and also blessed, I feel, to have you in my life, willing to work with me on this show. Thank you.
Well, in terms of, it's my pleasure as well. In fact, I recall with our great friend Roy, that you even predated me in terms of doing being a host on Community Forum, and I miss not doing them, but life sometimes gets in the way. But I'm happy to be here with you. But I want to talk about, I want folks to get a sense of how you decided to write the books that you have. And I really want to start with, and I want to show who's the fox who sneezed. And I know that's the time when I met your granddaughter, Ellie. And so let's start there. Let's start with, because this was your first book, was it not?
That was the first one, yeah. With Elle, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. What was the thinking behind that? What got you started writing in the first place? Let's give our reviewing audience some sense of that.
Sure. So I think I'd always wanted to write a book to help people. I had come from a family that, perhaps might be considered from the other side of the tracks almost. And as a result, I felt like I had some bias that I had to overcome, and it wasn't a successful bias. It was more of bias that would make you quite unsuccessful in life. And I felt that if I could write about that and help people with a pathway to move on, that would be something good to do. And so that's where we started with you can pick it up, the first book even. Well, this is the one for Elle, but let's pick up the Break the Curse. So unlike the Red Sox...
this is Break the Curse, folks.
Yes, and it's not the Red Sox we're trying to break. We're trying to break the curse of people who have got, say, into a situation not of their own doing, where they don't have good influences. And so the book is Break the Curse, a template for change. And so I wrote that in a number of ways from the time I was probably 20 until much later in life, and finally came to a point where I wanted to write, get it out there as maybe a legacy, but in terms of helping other people to go from where I came from to a better place.
Well, I see how you articulate it, but I want to read how it's described, probably by your promotion people, or in terms of how they've done it. They say, in Break the Curse, Kelley outlines a 10-step process aimed at transforming one's mindset, which he describes as essential for overcoming adversity. Kelley emphasizes that while it's easy to blame external factors, true empowerment comes from within. Nothing stops us from doing what we want but ourselves, he insists, a sentiment that captures his approach to both personal and professional growth. His practical advice on setting goals, finding mentors, and embracing conflicts serves as a toolkit for anyone seeking a fresh start. Kelley's message is clear. Resilience begins with responsibility, and the path to change starts within each of us. Please elaborate on that. That's a mouthful.
Yes.
But it seems to me that as passionate as you are, as I've seen, you're a great businessman, you're a great friend. You are a person who tries to assist others. Show us how you overcome adversity, how you've got both personal and professional growth, and maybe how you set goals and how you find a mentor. Because let's make this instructive to our viewing audience.
Well, first of all, I like the commentary. Resilience starts with responsibility. And I think that's so important that I had a discussion with Elle, my granddaughter, who she's been in this whole environment of writing. She loves to write. And let's see if I can get that up there. So that's The Fox Who Sneezed. She and I wrote that book and released it in 2018. And at the time, she was 6. Mm-hmm. And she just had a real affinity towards words and writing. In fact, I'll share a lovely, small anecdote from Elle. I would pick her up at the babysitter's when from the very beginning, and when she was 9 months old, she had not yet learned how to talk. And she took one look at me and said, "I want mommy," just like that. So her first words were a sentence, and we knew that she was going to be special. And she really, it was an amazing thing to have her blurt out a sentence instead of a word as the first thing. And we live in a multi-generational home, so she's with us a lot. And when I sat down to write, she'd write with me, and I invited her to tell her own story. And that's where we came up with this idea where it was The Fox Who Sneezed, and guess what came out? So that was the first book that we actually published, and I became more and more interested in publishing the book that would help people. So I thought that was a good start, if you would. And speaking of how to start, people want to know, how do I start? How do I do it? I want to share like another anecdote that I think is great. Mm-hmm. So as you know, and the audience may or may not know, I've owned my own business now, really old. This is my 50th year.
All right.
All right, so Spanish 50 años, all right. And when I started, it was a roofing business. It was here in Stoughton. And I started the business because nobody would hire me. That's the truth. I couldn't get a job. So a buddy of mine had a house, and he said, "Look, I got to do this roof, and all the prices are really tough." And I said, "Well," he said, "would you like to try it?" I said, "Sure." I said, "You pay for the shingles, I'll borrow a ladder, and we'll see if we can do it." So a friend of mine went there to the house. We went out back, and we immediately took the shingles and turned them over and read the directions because we didn't know how to do it. So that was the first thing that I did. And that person liked the job and said to his neighbor, "You know, these guys are pretty reasonable." And that's how I started my roofing business.
So sometimes, you know, what that suggests, well, it's more than suggests. What that indicates is sometimes you got to take initiative. Sometimes there's circumstances that may appear to work against you that may provide an opportunity. Because as you talk about here, one, you couldn't get hired.
Yep.
A friend comes to you, and you know that's God's intervention.
Okay.
A friend will come to you and started a business. Now, that may have been your start. What is the business that you're in now?
So,
I mean, you talk about 50 years.
Yeah. So what happened was I'm in several businesses now. One of them is publishing, but probably the thing that gives me the most, provides the most, is a real estate management business. And in the course of doing the roofing, my knees went bad over a period of about 5 years, and I knew that I'd have to do something else. And so while everybody that I did work for maybe wasn't rich, they all had real estate. So I decided I needed to get real estate. And so then I started to purchase properties that needed a lot of work. And I was a hard worker, and that ties into another point that I'll get to with the romance novel that I've written since then. Mm-hmm. But so it's really just willingness to work and to learn. And I just kept going.
Well, if I look at a progression of your writings, as you talked about, you started with Elle, in turn with your granddaughter, and you wrote The Fox Who Sneezed. And, that's well illustrated. I would arguably say directed towards a children's book.
It is a children's book.
And, but it's very, wholesome and inviting and engaging. You went there. Your next venture was Break the Curse, and that's when we talked about, your resilience, your advocacy, your overcoming adversity, looking at mentors, using friends in order to recognizing some direction as to where you may go, and that's the reason why you are not just have become a excellent business person. Then you and I share a health issue, and that's we're both cancer survivors, and that's I'm gonna shake your hand because that's a good place to be amongst the survivors, and that's where you did Cancer
Rest in Peace.
Rest in Peace.
Yep.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about, well, before I get there, let me just, I want to just say, I always want to say what your publicists will say first and then give you a chance to respond. But this is Cancer Rest in Peace, folks. Kelley's journey with cancer is at the heart of Cancer Rest in Peace, or RIP, a memoir where he takes readers into the reality of fighting central nervous system lymphoma, a rare and aggressive disease. By personifying his cancer as she, Kelley gives shape to an otherwise invisible enemy, describing the illness as an almost invasive presence in his life. His choice of words captures the daily struggle, adding layers to his narrative that many readers battling illness find relatable. As Kelley himself notes, cancer mounts as relentless siege on his victims, yet he approaches it with a resilient humor that softens the darker moment of his journey. If you will, let's talk about that journey. Let's talk about what you experienced, which gave you the courage in order to write this book about cancer, RIP.
So I think, especially for people who are less lucky than I was, I think it's a journey of luck first. In 2018, I was in the Stoughton Center and I crashed my truck, and I have a more or less perfect driving record. And I got out of the truck and looked down, and how did I hit? I hit the island in the center, and I got out and shook my head and didn't know what happened. Luckily, it was a small amount of damage, and I got back in the truck and drove away. And it turned out that I drove for 3 hours to get to my house, which was 6 miles away. So what had happened, something had gone on with my brain, and I ended up being hospitalized. I had great support. One of the lucky strokes is that I live 30 minutes away from Dana-Farber. So that's a fantastic hospital. My doctors, in fact, my doctor, Dr. Lakshmi Nayak, she wrote the foreword to the book. So they were just exceptional in their care of me. So central nervous system lymphoma, it's a very, very unusual cancer in that only 3 in a million get it and only 1 survives. So, and frankly, in the 6 years since I was diagnosed, I've never met another person with CNS lymphoma. I have met and helped a number of people with glioblastoma and other cancers. We try to help them keep their spirits up and maybe give them some ideas to how they could help conquer the disease. So for me, I'll give you one of those ideas. I do everything left-handed now. I was a right-handed person, and I'm trying to create new neural pathways for my brain to access the things that it has to do. So I can even use chopsticks left-handed, believe it or not. And so that's my best advice, is to keep asking your brain to work in different ways. And in my case, with brain cancer, it's actually attacking your brain. So you have to think your way out of that, and it's quite difficult, really.
Well, you know what's remarkable, and I just decided to crack the binding because I want to go into and look at the, I'm at the table of contents and looking at some of the chapters. But, as I listen to you, you're amazing. I mean, and you're amazing from the standpoint of when you go through adversity and then you're able to come out on the other side and to get a positive lining to what has occurred to you. I mean, yes, that's, not many people can do that, Steve. You're probably in a very small percentage because most people, if they have faced adversity, they're down from that point and on. And so seemingly just listening to you, my eyes focused directly on chapter 2, and it says, face off with fear. Talk about that. Tell us when you wrote that, what was going on in your head when you wrote that, and in your heart?
Well, I think that when you get told that you only have 3 to 6 weeks to live, that's a strong bit of medicine to take, and I just became like a renegade when and I tell people now I'm a cross between a bad penny and a cockroach. So you can't get rid of me and you can't kill me.
Yeah, right.
And I think that, keeping that sort of spirit, I've just always had like an ability to say, there's always people far worse off. And I think it's important to keep trying to help those people. And I think that's good. And I think too, the book shares a vulnerability. So I had a claustrophobic result from the MRI. I didn't realize I would be claustrophobic, but I refused. They put me into the machine, and it's not a small machine, it's a large machine. It pounds away at you, and I just said, no, I'm not doing it. And so people, so presenting me as this fearless person isn't true.
Well,
I had a lot of fear.
Yeah. Well, having been in the MRI machine, it is challenging, and you have to. I found I had to really focus my mind elsewhere because you're in this tube like space. Now, sometimes they pipe music in and do different things, but that sense of being in that type of space, and I never knew that I suffered with it, and I didn't get a reaction while I was in it, but I definitely was an uncomfortableness when you're in there. Yeah. I'm sure some of our viewing audience will have experienced it as well. But I want to walk. I'm intrigued by at least the headings on your of each one of the chapters. I just want to go through a few of them just to get you thinking. You had preparing for battle.
Yeah.
I'm going to have you just talk briefly about. I want to go to preparing for battle. Jumps out at me. Enduring the cure, lifeline or assembly line. Saints and angels, those are some of them, or maybe even patron saints of cycling, because I know you're a big-time cyclist, so I can't let you go without talking about that. But let's talk about preparing for battle. What battle are you referring to there in that chapter 18 of your book?
So that's when they told me that the way out, if you would be a stem cell transplant. And I was determined that I would survive it, and not everyone does. So I called into the hospital and asked for a stationary bike in my room. And they said, you won't need that, people are too tired. And I said, no, I want that. And it took 2 weeks of like finding out who could make the call. And in fact, as I got the transplant, I had the big, I even forgot what it's called, where the blood goes in, the port, and every day on the when I was being treated, I would grab all of the tubes and get on. The stationary bike was right next to it. I grabbed the little tripod with all the chemicals, and I'd go to the stationary bike, and I'd go as long as I could. And every day I would try to beat the time from the day before.
Okay.
So I just said that in order to get through this, I was going to have to keep fighting it. And so I got the first fight was just getting the bike in the room, because they all said, no, you won't need it. And I said, no, I'm going to need it. And I did.
Want to jump to chapter 20, Enduring the Cure. What was the thinking behind that particular chapter?
Well, maybe people don't realize, but when you get a stem cell transplant, it affects your body a lot. Essentially what they're doing is trying to kill the disease. And they do that, in my case, an autologous stem cell transplant. They remove all your blood, and then they treat it and basically kill it, and they put it back into you when it's clean. So in the process of giving you all of the chemicals, in my case, my tongue started to fall off. So I had just a stub left, and I couldn't talk. So now I'll talk. It was pretty bad. That was the result of the chemicals. My face got so swollen, it turned red and became about the size of a basketball. Wow. Maybe a small basketball. But yeah, so there's a lot to endure as you get through the treatment. And so yeah, you just got to fight it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to stop there because I don't want our viewing audience, I just want to call you, you're a hero to be able to, one, talk about it, to be able to write about it, to be able to, and as you told me, off camera, you wrote it because you want to try to be helpful to those who may be going through similar types of situation. And folks, I can't encourage you more, read both books. Start, no, I can't leave Elle out. You got to start with, a great children's book with The Fox Who Sneezed. Can You Guess Who Came Out? That's Elle Valentina Dubois and Grandpa Steve. That's number one. Just to see what it is in the sense of when you're going through adversity and you want to make sure that you have, something that'll give you some encouragement, give you some drive, give you a sense of being. Read Break the Curse by Steve Kelley, A Template for Change, 10 Steps to Restart Your Life. And as we were just talking about, cancer, RIP, rest in peace, the ultimate fight, where, as it said in what I read from the publicist, taking my personal experience and exposing it. For you to be able to talk about this, and quite frankly, not break down in tears, because you endured that chapter which says enduring the cure is real. And I suggest, folks, we all have been through, as I stated earlier, Steve and I both are cancer survivors. Now, I am, mine is prostate cancer. I'm 22 years, we never say cured, but in terms of I'm 22 years here as a survivor, which is a blessing. But nonetheless, it was an experience that went through, unlike yours specifically, but it has its own nature, and I'm sure many of the people who are watching this have gone through experience. And I tell folks, it doesn't matter whether you have cancer, whether you have heart disease, whether you have lung disease, kidney disease, it doesn't matter what you're going through. It is something that's both on the person who is afflicted with the disease. But let's shift for a minute before I get to the book which we wanted to talk about today was Swept Away, your romance novel. Let's talk about caregiving. I think in all of our lives, while we talk about this singularly or individually because we are the person who is afflicted with the illness, talk about the caregiving. And that as broadly as you want, immediate family, external, the doctors. There are caregivers out there which help you through this and to be able to triumph through this illness. Let's talk about that.
So I felt it was important enough that I included a whole section in Cancer Rest in Peace for each of my family members to write what they'd like. And I think that's really, it allows people to look at what was happening to them while I was sick, for instance. And it's very difficult on the people who are going to the hospital at night, in the morning, waiting for calls that they don't want to get. You know, it might be bad news or something like that. And even the children who don't know what's going on, and that's hard for them. And so I encourage them to write in this small sections in the back of the book. So it's not all about me. There's also, from their point of view, what was it like to endure this really difficult illness as they view it, not how I view it. And it's so easy to become selfish as the attention is going to you, which you need the attention, but you know, they also need attention. So I think that's an important point of anybody going through an illness, is to try and pull themselves back enough to be self-aware enough, if they can be, to get a sense of what it's like for the other people. So I think that's important.
Well, I raised that point because of, as you know, mental illness is one of my, and suicide is one of the areas of, I call it my ministry, particularly after the loss of my son 14 years ago to suicide. And being involved with AARP and Samaritans and NAMI, oftentimes it's the caregivers who are forgotten in that process, because they're going through as well, along with the person that's afflicted. And I'm so happy, because I had not read that chapter, that you did that. I mean, what you have done is to give credence and recognition that others are going through while you, the person afflicted with the disease, is going through. And that's an important, statement for you to have made and to have written about. I just think that that's just an important piece. And I want to say to caregivers out there, we recognize, we see you.
I like that.
We see you. We see you. We see that you are going through along with the person afflicted, and oftentimes that is just not recognized, even by the professionals in the business, the doctors and the nurses, et cetera. They just don't oftentimes recognize that, and I'm glad that you underscored that in your book. But you've come from a children's book to telling folks how to overcome adversity, to personalizing it with cancer, RIP, rest in peace, and now growing in your, I'm gonna call your dynamism, in the sense of your authorship, that you have now moved into another genre in terms of a romance novel, and in fact, now I can say, well, I know Steve Kelley, also known as his pseudonym is Steve James, and some of my favorite writers, James Patterson and others. I'm not sure if those are their actual names or not, I don't recall. But let's talk about Get Ready to Be Swept Away. And I want to always give the publicists their due, and then let you as the author walk us through. It says, in Swept Away, Kelley offers a lighter yet equally important exploration of life through a romance narrative. Set on a single cruise, the novel tells the story of Tina, and it seems like you always personalize it too. You always pick out a woman character, because as you did, and as you referred to your cancer as a she. Tina, a yoga instructor in search of meaning beyond her daily routines. The book touches on themes of love, independence, and trust, reflecting Kelley's belief that relationships are as much about self-discovery as they are about companionship. While Swept Away follows some traditional romance tropes, Kelley infuses the story with stronger reflections on human connections and personal growth. It goes on, but it's so revealing. I'm just gonna sit back and let you walk us through. I want folks, this is the book, folks. Swept Away, I'm Young Forever,
Yours.
a novel by Stephen James, the pseudonym for Stephen Kelley. Steve, walk us through what your thinking was, what you decided. Just tell us, take us through the book along with Tina.
So I think that, especially men, we tend to think in a lens of men being more powerful. And what I'd like to do is, in my writing, is to feature strong women. And I think that they are the stronger ones, and obviously they give us our children. And men don't have a clue and can't have a clue. So I think that that's part of the writing that I do. And also, in the case of Swept Away, I think that we're all controlled by culture, and I think that your background, your bias that I talked about in Break the Curse, when you add that into the culture you're brought into, you're immediately thrust into a decision when you're 19 or 20, 22, whatever age, where the first of your buddies, of your girlfriends or whatever is getting married, and then the pressure starts for you to get married. And I think that that all contributes to the awful divorce rate we have, and not only here in this country, but across the world. And what I tried to show in Swept Away is that if we could think better about our choices, that we could maybe impact ourselves and others in a better way. There's a reason where 58% of people are divorced. And I think that that reason starts with the culture we have. So the book tries to show a woman and a man who come from different cultures who get an unexpected result looking in an unexpected place. It's a place where culture wouldn't let you go. So I think that's sort of the surprise, the strong women doing unbelievable things in this book, and changing their minds about where they should be looking.
Well, interesting in terms of your how you have laid that out or explained your thinking. Why a cruise ship? And talk to me about how you think about, because you and I have had this conversation. I always tell you, I got all these books in my head. And you said, well, fine, let's get them to paper. And I said, yeah, maybe at some point in time. But how you came about picking the character, picking the setting, what you talked about as to, your observations made you think about the subject matter, but then to place it on a cruise and the title. How did you come to that way of thinking, to put the setting on the cruise and then the title Swept Away? Because that title could mean a multiplicity of things.
And it does.
Okay.
So I think that first people could have this understanding that the romance novel is the main seller for all the book industry. So that's a great place to start. And cruise ships, going on cruises, is the ultimate getaway. So as we're all faced with
My
times...
wife and me, we love them.
Yes. Yeah, you want to get away, then you go on a cruise. And there's so many things to do on a cruise, and it's so much fun. And the subgenre of this book is adventure. So it's a romance novel with adventure. So it allows you as a writer the freedom to explore adventures, take a journey with the characters and show their growth, show compassion, show, in this case, there are characters in this book, the pirates, who are doing awful things. And we try to find a way that we can have some level of compassion and understanding for them. They still get shot.
Okay.
But
got to get some realism in here.
But there is a sense that it's an exciting journey, and there's a lot that you could take from a personal journey that other people are taking.
So let's talk about, okay, so we have what you pointed out here. You said, fine, I want to the book talks about persons' lifestyles, which have resulted in a lot of divorces because of just what happens in society. You talk about differences of culture and maybe some divergence in terms of the culture. You put the setting on a cruise ship because that somewhat locks you in. You know, you got to follow the ports that the cruise is going to go on, and when you're at sea, you're not going to be able to do your own thing necessarily. Yeah. So there is some order to that. I haven't read it, so I don't know where the pirates come into play and how they interface with them. We may want to talk about that a little bit more. But talk to me about the relationship that Tina has engaged in. Because I gather, did Tina meet this person on the cruise? Is that how it was? Or she went on the cruise with someone?
Yeah, she met the person on the cruise.
Okay.
And that person promptly stumbled and fell into her. And it was an embarrassing start for that person. And I think we call him Mr. Stumble and Bump or something like that in the book.
Sounds like a lot of guys, doesn't it?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, we can all tend to stumble. So I think that it was a fertile ground, if you would, to be able to talk about issues and maybe open a door for people to look at the way other people are doing things too. We talk a lot about good food and how it's prepared, and I think that's a fun topic for people anyways.
So talk to me about the pirates. When did you, what was the thinking behind inserting the pirates into that? You know, those of us who grew up during the swashbuckling days of, and in fact, in some instances, the black and white films that they had of that. But pirates of today are viewed differently when you talk about what's happening in the Persian Gulf and other places whereby ships are being boarded by pirates. You don't think about swashbuckling, et cetera. Talk about why you inserted the pirates in and how you inserted them into your romance novel.
So I think that we have them coming from not the place when people talk about cruise ships and they go to their own island, and that's a plush island with bars and all kinds of stuff. So there are people living on islands in the world who are not, they're in stink bombs of places where there's sewage and other things like that they have to live with, they can't get out of. And their attempt to get out of those circumstances involves stealing someone else's treasures. And trying to show like how it happens is a little bit more of understanding the way the world is instead of the way we want it to be. And I think that's part of what I try to get at is, to get people to break away from their own myopic vision of what's going on in the world.
So it seems to be a theme that runs through all of the books we talked about. And folks, before I move on to talking about that, I really, join me. I haven't had a chance yet because when Steve called me, I didn't have an opportunity to read and digest this, but I will. Swept Away, I'm Your Forever, a novel by Stephen James. I recommend this to you, which is a different genre that Steve has grown into, but having read at least two of the four books, there is a theme that runs through. And just knowing you, ever since, and I first met you when we were both hosts on Community Forum with Roy Cohen, and got to know you more as because we start talking about some of the things that you wanted to do here in the town of Stoughton, and we even did a show talking about the whole development of both in terms of a garage and other sites right in downtown Boston, in and around near where your business is now, your real estate business. You have the parking lot that's right there by the commuter rail stop here in Stoughton, and just what you have attempted to do here in town. Talk to me about how these themes of giving, caring, educating drive Steve Kelley.
I think I have committed to memory this thing on vowels for some crazy reason. AEIOU. Appreciate, empathize, improve, organize, and understand. So they're action verbs that I just created that.
Hey, that's pretty good. I know the AEIOU, but I just be able to put that definition to it is even fascinating.
Yeah, just like to appreciate where you are, others. I mean, how good we have it, and we don't always know that. Empathizing with other people, I think that opens a whole world to, even, let me dance very tenderly into the whole political arena, empathizing with the various views. I have two sons. One's an avowed Democrat, one's an avowed Republican. I'm a neutral. Right. I want to be a good father. And I think that idea of, like, how can you embrace, empathize for both, right? It's hard. And we want to try to improve the world for everybody. So appreciate, empathize, improve, organize, right? You have to be organized or you're not getting anywhere, and try to have more understanding. So I wear a little amulet, and it's to remind me to be outspoken with firmness, kindness, and patience. And it's just like, you have to be more understanding, because we're not in a world that it works to be not understanding. And I think Ubuntu, I think Desmond Tutu came up with this idea that the only way it works is if we're in this together.
Yes.
So you can't be together if you're pushing other people's ideas away all the time.
Well, I mean, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because just knowing you, that sentiment comes through in almost every aspect that I've seen you in, even personally in our terms of with me. I see that with your employees, and I certainly saw it with your granddaughter, having witnessed it with your sons. But just for you to be able to say, I don't want to venture into the political pieces because there's so much that's out there, but I agree with you. There is going to be some difficulty in folks trying to find that common ground. And we'll have to see how things, play out. But I think how you have approached in all of your writings and how you live your life. We didn't even talk about your cycling. You even tried to get me into the dirt bike piece. I didn't venture in with you on that, but nonetheless, you tried. But constantly trying to embrace people and to bring them into a comfort zone. And that's how I see you, Steve, in terms of doing it, not only in terms of your writings, but in terms of how you live your life. Let me give you a moment. Let's brag on Steve for a minute.
Probably enough of that.
No. I see, because it reminds me of, and I'll just say it in terms of the name. When I worked for Governor Dukakis, and I worked in the Commonwealth, in the state administration, and it was a matter of when we used to prepare presentations for him, he wanted presentations which brought it, how am I affected, or how am I embracing this? Because sometimes if you're looking at it as if it's somebody else's issue or problem,
yep.
It's it may be a conversation, it may just be a talking point, but when you can embody it like you've done in the books, you feel exactly what you're saying. So I want talk a little bit about how you embody that, Steve. I'm calling it bragging, but I want folks to be able to say, maybe if I start approaching life in that way, I'll get a different understanding of how I might do something. So I think you're helping the viewing audience. It may be from my vantage point bragging on Steve because I think you're a great person, but I think more importantly, let's make this something in terms of educate somebody, because there's people out there going through a lot of things, Steve.
I can flip the table to you.
Okay.
I mean, think about this. I mean, what you've been through, wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. And how you have embraced it. And tell us a little bit. I mean, this doesn't have to be, it's our life, right?
Yeah.
So let's change things. We don't have to stick to the script. And maybe that's a lesson for people.
Yeah.
Stop sticking to the script,
right.
Okay? Change it.
Yeah.
So here's a change for you. Like one thing I want to say, you want to write a book? You want to write a book about how something very important to you and how you can help others. And there's your theme right there. So now you just got to figure out how you're going to do it. Mm-hmm. There's your task, right? And you can speak in all of these things about the number of organizations that you belong to, that you input, that you try to have impact, and the people you have impacted. So how do you do that? Like, because there's a little bit of you that pinches when you're doing it. So how do you accomplish that?
You know, it's interesting, and having the conversation forces you to think, to get outside the I, in terms of the we. So, for example, I have on my lapel, this one here is the Samaritans. This is the Legacy Society. I mentioned about losing my son to suicide 14 years ago, and I guess some people would want to be able to hide and say, oh, in terms of, whoa, it was me, et cetera. Never had that sentiment with regards to the issue of suicide and the loss of my son to suicide. It was something that he went through from the standpoint of having the illness. And and certainly as I talked about the caregiver, it was really, really tough. But my involvement in Samaritans and NAMIs and the Mass Association for Mental Health helps me to educate and also help others through that. And that's what I say to folks. I just this morning, I wrote a check out because we now have the Feast the Family Foundation, and I help organizations and give funds to organizations, Samaritans, Mass Association of Mental Health. There's a local organization here in terms of mental health. I think it's Mental Health Deliverance, Inc., a young man here named Brandon Texera. He is doing it. That's a shout out for you, Brandon.
Nice.
You can support. And I just wrote a check out. I have to mail it when I go over to the post office. So, yeah, the way that I do it, there are a lot of people who may have experienced the same thing. Either one, with the suicide and mental illness, they may want to climb into a shell and not want to talk about it and not want to reach out or feel some sense of guilt.
And it maybe destroys their life,
that's right. Feel some sense of guilt. What could I have done? We address all of that in terms of educating, and I suggest any person viewing this program who has that sentiment, reach out to others because it's not you at all in that instance. We talked about us being cancer survivors. Yeah, 22 years, getting that diagnosis is not we seem strong and resilient now, but when we're hit with that particular news, it hits pretty hard.
You tend to shatter.
That's right. So we're living proof that you can overcome it, and in terms of address it in a positive way, to do things like you have. I join organizations, you've written books to try to help people. So you are right, Steve. I mean, that if I took your idea as a starting point or a title, I don't even have to wear a working title.
Yep.
On the book, I probably could write volumes about my life experiences and how I've overcome certain types of adversity. So I think you're right. I think you're on point there, my friend.
Yeah, just so that you could aim at the people who are not handling it well. Not the ones who are doing well, but the ones who aren't doing well. And for them to have like a text, something they can refer to, read again, could be a big help.
Well, I think that, I glanced over just to get a sense of the time that we have here. And, we wanted to certainly thank the team here at SMAC and Anya and Caroline. And I didn't get I lost our producer's name, who was actually in there producing, but they'll have to add that to us. Or, if we had the little thing in our ear, they could tell me what it is.
Like
so
the big news people.
That's right. So,
what they're telling me is to say
that. But I want to thank them. I mean, for being able to, and I want to thank you for giving me a call, because I haven't, like I said, I don't think either of us have done a community forum program for some time.
Yeah.
But to be able to do this with you is definitely a treat, and to be able to have the viewing audience see the progression of and the sensitivity and the objective and the goals and what you want to convey to the readers. It's just extraordinary, and more importantly, how you've done it. I mean, it's just a matter. The two of the books personalize your own experience, and that's like sometimes ripping a scab off a wound.
Yeah,
I mean,
it can be.
Not a lot of folks can do that, to be able to be so open and to bare their souls on it, and you've done that definitely with both Break the Curse and with Cancer RIP. But before we close, is there any message you want to impart to the viewing audience?
I think maybe whether it's Alzheimer's or whatever the particular illness is, try to help the people in the way that they can receive it, I think is part of the message that I think is important. I was taught by one of my students back in the day about listening. I was teaching the course, and he said, here's what listening is. And I still remember, liberate yourself from your own thinking. So if you can do that when you're dealing with people who are ill, it'll help you to help them. So. Well,
that is such a great way in which to end this program, Steve. I just so value your friendship. I'm gonna help you, a publicist, because I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna end this by going, folks, 4 books. The Fox Who Sneezed, Can You Guess What Came Out? By L. Valentina Dubois and Grandpa Steve. Then I say, buy this for your young people. We're in the holiday season. Go out, buy tons of them, and give it to everybody you know. This should be in the schools for sure. Then, Break the Curse. As you heard from Steve, he wrote this to be able to tell folks about his own experiences, how he overcame adversities and now is a successful business person for over 50 years, and how he went about it, how he found mentors, how he embraces conflict, how he had a friend who really gave him the opportunity to start to make him think about that he could prevail, and he did. And then he came to his own personal story of his own triumph over an illness. Not an illness exactly that we both share, but we both are cancer survivors. And it talks about that, and what he just stated, it goes beyond that specific illness. It goes to any person who is suffering from any type of illness, and how they might be able to address that, overcome it, deal with it, find solutions on how to do that. And then, of course, we both mentioned the importance of our caregivers. And then he just said, well, I'm going to a different genre. I'm going to take the same issues, again, using the different settings in order to bring home issues which people need to confront and to deal with, and to see how we can make this a better place for all of us to live in. And that's what he's done, is Swept Away, I'm Yours Forever. And we even have a pseudonym now. It's Stephen James, and I encourage you to join me. I haven't read it yet, but I will get a copy of it. I will read it, and we'll try and embody it. So, Steve, I want to thank you for inviting me to have this conversation with you today about, I know we came to talk about Swept Away, but I decided
We got swept
that,
away.
Yeah, that's right. I got swept away in talking about all of these great novels and the ways in which you have influenced so many people with that. And I didn't mention, because there was before I go, I know that I think Break the Curse is an award-winning book, or it's mentioned. Well, tell her, come on, I want you to tell them. I can't find it, and we're running out of time, so I want you, what is the award that you are?
There you go. So,
Okay.
so
Oh, no, we got to hold it up. I want folks to see it.
So Cancer...
it's a 2022 Next Generation Indie Book Awards finalist, awarded to Cancer, R.I.P., The Ultimate Fight. And then you said that so it's the Cancer book that got the award. So congratulations. I'm sitting here with an award-winning author, my good friend, Stephen Kelley, also known as Stephen James. Get all 4 books. Make it a package for your holiday season. Just go on, I presume you can go on Amazon and get all 4 of the books.
Amazon, Barnes & Noble.
Barnes & Nobles, go out there.
Kindle.
Yeah,
You can get everything.
just I say, make this a holiday gift for a young person as far as the Foxtrot Sneeze. But for all of us, let's pick up a copy of Break the Curse, Cancer, R.I.P., and Swept Away. So with that, Steve, I want to say thank you, my friend. I trust you and the family had a great Thanksgiving, but more importantly, I want you to have a good rest of the year and as we approach 2025.
Well, thank you,
care,
Joe.
my friend.
And everybody should have at least one friend like Joe. Let me tell you, this is fabulous.
Take care. We will hopefully do this again soon.
Thank you very much.